Hello and welcome to episode 7 of Big Boss Battles, Big Boss and Babble. With me, as usual this week, we have Mr. Dan.
Hello.
And we've got George.
Hey.
And Mr. Toby.
Hello there.
Hey, we're all here. Right, so I thought we'd start off this week just having a quick chat about Tooth and Tail, because I believe we've all played it this week. And as we all got it from... we got it... Oh, I'm Trent J, by the way. I'm Terry. I wasn't here last week. Hello. I'm here as well. But anyway, yes. So George, as you sort of introduced us all to this game, do you want to crack on with the Tooth and Tail?
Yeah. I mean, I can give a rough summary of what my experience what it has been with. Anyways, tongue twister aside, it's a strategy game. We've all been playing it. It's what I really like about it is it's very fast paced. It's very new player friendly, but it's complicated enough to where there's a lot of depth to the strategy, and it's a very fast-paced, enjoyable strategy game. It takes a lot of the micromanaging out of things, and I think that's probably the thing that I like the most out of it is that while there is a little bit of micromanaging, it's more about let's get some troops going, let's kill some people, let's get some strategy going, and see who can basically win.
Yeah, I found that as well. It's just like it starts out very fast. You sort of start, put your farms down, put your little things down that generate the enemies, and then you've got an army within like a minute,
right?
And you can just go. And I really like that.
There's been a lot of comparisons to like StarCraft, and I mean, I can kind of see what they're talking about because it is about, you have to expand very quickly and gain your resources. You have to start creating more and more farms because your farms decay and then they deplete and then you're done.
Yeah.
It's definitely fast, but the minimalist side is probably what I think is the kind of best selling point of that, because there is so little that you have to do. And I know that in RTS games there generally aren't many controls, it's normally click and go, but because you are the cursor, it removes even that element of kind of drawing a box around what units you want to select and drawing a this and that. And I haven't quite got used to rolling through the units and pulling certain units over to me because I'm still not that far into the story, but no, it's quite good. I'm impressed with it so far.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the easy controls. I was really surprised with the fact that you can do everything. The WAS and D keys just literally move the camera, and then everything else is pretty much done in your mouse. It's just so quick and easy to get into.
I mean, it kind of keeps you on your toes because you constantly have to keep moving yourself essentially to kind of, put troops here, make sure you have this farm going. So it does have that hecticness to it that some of the other RTS games have, but it's just simplified so beautifully. That's what like Dan said, it's just really very well done minimalistically.
It does feel odd initially, and, well, I suppose not even initially. It feels odd all the way through that you're this big character and that you can't attack because you're the cursor, basically. Because you're this big character and you've got these, even the small kind of squirrels or lizards are aggressive, but you are the cursor, and that felt a little bit alien at first. That's my first kind of real negative with the game, is that I was never doing anything passively. You are quite literally the cursor, and yeah, I know that's a bit of an odd point because it's a positive and a negative, but it does feel a bit strange.
I rather like that aspect to it. I thought it was very interesting and unique because it's all about being aware of what your enemy's doing, and you also have to be aware of your own position at the same time. Because, yeah, if you die, then suddenly you can't move any more troops and you have to wait for yourself to respawn. I kind of like that a little bit. Even if you are just the cursor, I think it adds a kind of an extra, a little bit of a layer of a strategy to it.
But I'm the cursor, and at the same time, I'm the general, so I've got health. So like in Command and Conquer or StarCraft, if I mouse my cursor over an enemy base to give an order, I don't get penalized for the amount of time that I spend with my cursor over that base. And I suppose it's probably because I kind of live and breathe, or for a long time I lived and breathed RTS titles. And so it feels a bit odd that I'm almost penalised for having a quick scout ahead. But that said, I am still enjoying the game, and I'm getting through the levels with kind of minimal retries, and I'm making decent progress. So it's not that bad a point. I notice now that I seem to be gaining more health as the battle goes on for longer.
Yeah.
Unless that mechanic is explained in a different way, like the amount of farms you have or whatever. But that's quite good. But yeah, it just seems odd that because some of the enemy generals keep dashing towards my farms.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was kind of hilarious. They keep just like running into my base and dying over and over again.
But are they attacking or are they just
Scouting?
oh, okay? That's fine. Because I wasn't there, because I was also scouting off, I kind of thought, how come they get to attack and I don't? But then obviously we were overpowering. Well, the pigs that man the farms were overpowering them. I want to change the subject slightly, unless anyone wants to. Does anyone have anything else to say about the game's mechanics?
Not from me.
There was one thing I did actually want to bring up. Like, my only gripe with the game Tooth and Tail thus far, though, is that the story of it, like, it's not as awesome as I'd hoped, because it has such great like art and it looks like such a great setting. I expected a little bit more from the story, and it's just like, okay, so they eat each other. All right, whatever.
I was just going to say, if nobody's got anything to say about the mechanics, I want to say that the story is absolutely brilliant. And
What? Really?
Yeah, and I really like the setting. There's this kind of industrial age thing going on. There's also obviously the Russian Revolution. The whole animals kind of just simply doing it because they're hungry and want to eat something is a bit odd. But cannibalism's a bit of a taboo, you know. It's not something cool that we engage. We don't nip down the shops and buy a human leg and cook it up. So obviously it is a little bit odd. But then if you're trying to dehumanize, as in remove that attachment to the terrible things that happened during the revolutionary period and the industrial era, then you're going to change the characters from human to something else. And by changing them to animals, unfortunately, you've now got a whole bunch of factions who the worst thing that's happening to them is they're all being starved and killed. And all of a sudden, because they are actually what we as humans do eat, you've now got a bit of a conundrum where you changed your main characters to non-humans, but also into food. So,
well, I didn't get that much from the story, to be honest with you. I think maybe I'm just not a historical buff. But
no, I mean the historical influences are really, really good. Although it doesn't quite make that much sense when the squirrels are like, hey, we're squirrels and we're starving, you need to go kill some badgers so we can eat the badgers, right, when squirrels live on nuts, right? You know, not to suddenly leave that historical reference and go on to a, you know, biological one. But it is good. I do like the whole, because the gear they're wearing and the whole kind of workers' revolt, and it's the workers revolting against an upper class, but then the royalty aren't getting involved, and then another faction appears, and it's all. I really like that. I like that kind of interlacing story, and I like the settings, and I like that they've taken on characteristics from history, while obviously also simply in some points just being influenced by it as opposed to directly replicating it. But I think that's a really good setting. I'm sorry that you don't.
Well, I mean, just to counter what you said, in my opinion, I don't think there was enough world building, to be honest with you. Like I said, I think they have such an amazing setting. They have such an amazing art style. They have such an amazing kind of theme around, animals, and, they're wearing clothes, and there's lizards, and there's squirrels, and there's all sorts of crazy, like a sniper fox, and that's all really cool. But to me, it doesn't feel like there was enough world building. I think a lot of what you're talking about, I mean, yes, obviously some of them are obviously references, but you're kind of drawing probably a lot, I think, from history, where I think they're just, I don't know if they earned that, if you know what I mean. I think they're kind of just, it was very loosey-goosey the way they played with the story, if you will. And it's just one area I wish it's just been a little bit more definition on. I'd like to have gotten to know, more about the leaders and the factions and all that kind of jazz.
Touche. No. That's. I mean, my opinion on it is entirely propped up by my slight historical knowledge of the period in time. Without that, I'd just be the same as someone who doesn't have that information going, oh, right, so that one's got a flamethrower and it used to be a
right.
So I know there'd be a lot of confusion if that, historical knowledge wasn't there, and that's a completely valid point. Yes, they could have done with some world building, even if it was just a big map between missions that you could view that showed you winning over certain regions, and then you could click and see that leader that they just mentioned, is seated here, and they have this and that and this and that. So
fair enough. Too bad they don't have mallards in the game.
Indeed. Ooh.
We don't talk about mallards anymore.
No,
okay.
We'll steer clear of that. Okay, so thank you for that, guys. Let's move on to the next thing. So, obviously, it's a big story this week. A certain big YouTuber said a certain word, and things happened. And we're not gonna go into all that too much. But what we want to discuss is the DMCA takedown portion of the story, which is quite frankly a bit ridiculous in my mind.
Well, he's not Voldemort. We can say his name. It was PewDiePie.
He who shall not be named. Yeah, well, so yeah. PewDiePie said the N word, as they often put it. But yeah, the DMCA takedown by the developer. Do we agree with that or not? I think it's a bit ridiculous.
I mean, it is within their legal rights that they have the ability to do this. Whether or not it's a good thing is another matter. But they are not breaking the law yet.
But fair use, they let the videos, how long were they up before they suddenly went harumph, and I don't think that's necessarily fair.
Yeah, see, I'm with George on that. It's not fair. They're using the copyright system for an issue which has nothing to do with copyright whatsoever.
Over a year. So, yeah.
I mean, on one side, I completely understand why they would want to remove their content. You don't want to be associated with that. That's fine. But at the same time, it's just...
It's the wrong way to go about it. It's
right.
Definitely.
And it has a lot of implications for the future, because I think as of this morning, they just approved it, didn't they?
Yep. PewDiePie now has one strike against his channel. To other people decide to do this, then he has lost his channel.
Yeah, but let's be honest. Even if he lost his channel and he made a new one, he'd build up he'd break records of how quickly it would build up again, just because he's that big.
True.
If I made something and somebody was making money off of that, and that person represented, even if it was for the briefest moment, something that I really didn't like, then I should think that I should hope that I would have in some way, some way of making sure that person didn't make money off of my product. This is a really odd situation, obviously, because once again, this comes down to, digital rights. But these people have made something, and, we don't know whether he's bought it. We don't know whether he's got a license, yada, yada. That doesn't matter, but he's made something off the back of that, This is the same as if I don't know, because there wasn't even a contract here. That's the thing. This is entirely non-contractual. This isn't somebody making a movie and then a musician going, "Hey, I made a song. Can I use clips from your movie?" It's not even that.
It's literally. I mean, if you let's just take the situation apart. If you just look at it at a very simplistic level, it's somebody basically saying, "Well, I don't want my product related to you because you said something I don't like." And at that basic level, one, they would have to be able to, in my opinion, to prove somehow that it affected their product in some way. And to be honest with you, while I agree completely with what they did, and I think that's perfectly fine, I don't think it's technically right. I don't think their product was affected in any way. I felt like they did this just because they could. And I think that has farther implications than anything else.
I mean, it has been affected now. They're being review bombed on Steam down to, what is it now?
They brought that on themselves by kind of doing that.
Yes. I think another dev, asked PewDiePie to remove his video playing their game, and that has gone through now, and he took it down of his own volition. I think that is another easier way that doesn't bring about all this difficulty and doesn't put a strike against his channel.
Indeed. I mean, I think I can't remember what my point was I was going to make. No, it was, but you know, where does it stop? Like us, we review games. If we put up a video review saying the game was rubbish, would it be fair that they DMCA and take the video down?
No, because it wouldn't be fair, because that's where we have the problem with fair use and freedom of speech and all that kind of jazz. That's the kind of it becomes this entire gray area that no one has the courts have never settled, and that's the problem now. This kind of sets a precedent from this point forward of, well, now it's pretty much free game. Anybody, if you say something you don't like, they can now just go ahead and say, well, get my stuff off your site or off your channel, or it kind of sets this huge precedent.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be the biggest fallout of this. I mean, you know, ignoring PewDiePie and all his situation, it's going to cause a problem for a hell of a lot more people.
Yeah, because if you can do it against, let's be honest here, the biggest YouTuber there currently is, then anybody smaller than that is fair game. So it's I don't know, maybe it's a lot of, you know, apocalypse talk, it's a lot of doomsaying, but it does have implications for the future period end, no matter what way you want to look at it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. I mean, like you say, PewDiePie's the biggest guy on YouTube, but this could now extend out. I mean, even if someone like IGN put out a bad review of a game, they could put a strike up against IGN, and they're a legitimate business, and that's a very bad thing in my mind.
But freedom of speech and the right to criticize are completely different things. Like, at the minute, the countries that talk the most about freedom of speech are also the most litigious about slander and libel. If I say I hate something, I might get sued. Whereas in another country where I'm basically not allowed to say that I hate something, other things will happen, but it won't be legal. There is an issue when it comes to rights and digital rights as to what people can say and what people can't say. And freedom of speech doesn't really even tie into that, as we've seen in this case, because these people didn't like this creator who has used something of theirs, and so have, you know, used their right to say, we made this, you shouldn't profit from it. You know, that YouTube is a massive anomaly, and we should one day sit down and talk about it, but the whole earning money from YouTube, you're accepting money from strangers, put simply. You know, Nescafe or random other company, Captain Morgan's, put X amount of money into advertising, and they don't get to say, we don't want to advertise on any channels that are run by this person, or we don't want to advertise on any channels that are run by people in this age group. And that's a flaw. And that means that people who are benefiting from YouTube are getting money from strangers, essentially. The whole advertising system there is completely balked.
Yeah,
and
but
similarly, the gaming ownership and right to distribute videos of a game, it's been so open, and people have called out companies that have said, well, no, you can't spoil our game, no, you can't show our game, that we've just come to assume that people can just display and air their game. But there's always, historically, when magazines were big, and when, you know, print was the only way that you'd really ever get to hear about a game before it came out, back then there was so much legal paperwork in, can we use this picture? No, you can't use this picture. Use this picture instead. Because people wanted an image shown. And it's only because of the internet and because of kind of YouTube and I suppose the ease of accessibility of screenshotting stuff that now we have this whole group of people that we call creators who are making stuff from other people's things.
I kind of agree in a way, but it also, because like you say, back in the day when it was magazines, there was all this legal stuff about you can't use this, you can't use that. Is this game developers literally lashing out due to lack of control?
If you ask me, yes.
And that's not a problem in my mind, because let's face it, if I uploaded a full movie onto YouTube, then I'm going to get that claimed and taken down. And
That's not your work, though.
No, but then
base of it.
Me recording a video of me playing a game isn't my work either, really.
It can be transformative, though.
Yeah.
That game was made by someone else. Yes, the games are more malleable, and you play them and go on your own path through them, but that content is still made by someone else.
When I'm watching someone play a game, I'm not watching the game, I'm watching the person. Which is...
Yeah. Like what we're saying, most of the time it's personality-based, not game-based. You're watching
what
it...
What video is the game, and what's the reviewer or the gamer who owns what part?
I agree. You've always made that... You've always used that argument, and it's a solid argument regarding Twitch and YouTube stuff whenever we've talked about it, because I frankly don't understand it or really engage with it. But yes, in your example, it's the personality of the individual. You are essentially going around a mate's house and watching them play a game, apart from you're not, because you're using the internet to do it. And is that the difference between streaming and YouTube edited gameplay footage? Or because I mean, obviously in this, I don't know.
It's a tricky subject.
We've gone too deep into the rabbit hole here.
Yeah,
I'm off topic.
If I may, there's my question to you guys. It's this: if, let's say, IGN, Polygon, whatever publisher released a racist article by accident, or said something stupid in an article by accident, and suddenly a developer came out and said, "Well, you know what? I want you to take my review off your website," would that be okay?
That's a very good question. I think the difference between a video personality, a YouTube personality, and a website is that the website is an entity first. So you might see a developer say, take this down, and in your example, Polygon or Kotaku, whatever, as an entity might say, no, because it was by a different author. Or no, because it was this. But then, similarly, those websites are all checked for stuff multiple times over as well. Accountability is very different when it's a one-man band versus a 10 or 11-person setup.
My point is it's a slippery slope. I see what you're saying, yeah, and technically you are correct, because it is different between what a logo is and what a single person is. I can see what you're saying there, but I think, and again, this is all just doomsaying. What just happened here with this situation. It's a slippery slope. It's dangerous, and it's going to have some big implications unless it's settled in court. Finally, after all this time, but chances are, I don't know, things are probably just going to go back to the way they were. They'll probably just ignore it.
So should everybody be able to make any video of any game that they have played because they bought the license? Because I do agree, and it's really got to be one extreme or the other. The ownership has either got to default to the developer, the actual creator of the product that's being experienced, or once the license is owned, it's got to be, out there for people to use. Because video creators and streamers shouldn't, we could change to a system where they all have to specifically request permission to stream or upload a video, and they have to get approval. But I don't think that's functional in the long term.
No, agreed. But I think we should move on from now, because now we're getting into the realms of licensing and all kind of different stuff. But be sure the situation is going to be a very interesting watch over the next few months and years, I do believe.
So we could probably talk about this in circles and make ourselves sick.
We could. But let's go from one controversial subject to potentially another one. An NK game where you shoot American soldiers. This one's for you, Toby.
Oh, heavens. Right, Hunting Yankee is a game from a North Korean studio where it appears to be from a propaganda game where you shoot American soldiers and get points. A sort of hunting game. And while it may seem a bit... I mean, my first reaction was, this is a bit off, this isn't very nice, but in the end, how's that different to the Homefront games or any Call of Duty ever?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, you can take the stance of, oh, it's North Korea, they're all mental and being controlled by everyone. But in the same vein, you've got games like Wolfenstein that was based around killing Nazis. Or you've got that level in Call of Duty where you killed civilians, or, you know, loads of other examples. Like Toby said, all the Call of Duty games, it's one side killing the other. What's the difference? Is it just because, oh, it's Americans, we can't kill the Americans? Well, yeah, you can.
Please don't.
I mean, you know, not all of them.
Oh, thank you. Okay, slight clarification there, all right?
No, I think when people talk about a race or a group of countrymen or countrywomen, they generally mean just the people in charge of it. Don't worry, George.
I appreciate that. I'll just put my little opinion on this. This is just like every other shit game that comes out on Steam. Forgive my language, but I barely even acknowledge this thing's existence. It's whatever. Who cares?
I think the difference here between the examples that were given earlier is the relevance and the setting. So, Homefront, for instance, is an alternate history setting, albeit slightly more advanced in the future, blah, 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 blah. You know, Wolfenstein is an alternate history in the past setting, whereas this was modern day setting. This is pretty much like if America released, well, they did, didn't they? You had America's Army, and wasn't Full Spectrum Warrior originally a training thing?
Yes, it was.
But it's very much like, because obviously that conflict was already going on in those examples. It's very much like America. Oh, actually, no, I need to not say America. It's very much like a developer who are based in America releasing a game where you bomb the eastern half of Asia.
Was that in one of the Modern Warfare games where you shot up churches or something?
In Resistance, there was a blown out church from Manchester. That really was quite a
I remember there was one COD game you're like in a plane or something that was bomb the mosques or something. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Whoa.
I would
don't
be,
know about that.
because if that was a thing, that would have made a big deal at the time.
Yeah, no,
and we would have all known about it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that wasn't a thing.
What this reminds me of is there was, I forget what the game was called, but it was the game that came out where it was a guy in a trench coat, and the entire game was just about killing people who were running away from you.
Hatred, yeah, hatred.
Okay, this exactly reminds me of that. And what my question in all this is that, what was the spirit, like what was the intentions behind making this game in particular? Was it just, if it was just to be hateful, you know, if it was just to be derogatory, if it was just to be, you know, demeaning to a race or creed or whatever have you, then I think that's crap. I think that's just, you know.
Well, I suppose in this case we have to assume it is. If it was made in North Korea for North Korean people, obviously the America is the big evil to them, isn't it? So I'm guessing that is exactly the point.
Right. So, I mean, in that regard, you know, I don't think, and while they're not my favorite games of the world, I don't think people who make Call of Duty exactly have hate or spite in their hearts. I think they're just making a game because they're trying to earn a check and, you know, feed their families. and whatever have you. They're just game developers. Everybody wants to be one. I wanted to be one when I was a kid, anyways. So I think there's a difference, maybe not for all of them, but I don't think that's the general intention.
Well, it depends. You get the times when you can clearly see that a developer is trying to make a statement. So like the aforementioned level in the Call of Duty game where you play as the insurgents. I don't know if that's the right word, and you kill innocent people. That wasn't that. I don't think that was a case of just working for a check. That was trying to make a statement. But that's also why they gave you the option in the game of, look, this is what's going on. If you want to skip this, you can.
Yeah, so that scene, the baddies there were Russian. They were a Russian militaristic faction who were trying to overthrow various parts of the world. The mission was called No Russian, and basically what it was is a bunch of this group were pretending they weren't Russian. They were pretending they were another group, I think they were Americans possibly, and shooting up a bunch of innocent people in an airport so that there would then be grounds for them to say, we are under attack. This is our authorization. This is our permission to go forward. So, I mean, that was, I don't think that had a political message outside of possibly people who you may perceive are good may in fact be manipulating things behind the scene. But what we're talking about here, this North Korean title, this game developed in North Korea, does in very many ways just amount to some crazy propaganda. But then on the same par, if people are living inside that bubble and they make a game where you're shooting a bad guy in the modern day, they're going to naturally pick that faction they've been told is terrible. And this is like us just randomly grabbing any old throwaway game that's been developed by a bunch of people somewhere. Anyone could grab a random game off of one of the storefronts and try and say that it has a certain mission or message. I'm sure that there's a lot of anti-other race games out there that are, amid the deluge on mobile platforms.
And I think that's kind of, for me, that's what the focus is here. Is it's if a game is developed with hate or spite in its coding, then I just ignore it. I think the best way to deal with those types of games is to ignore their existence, because that's what's going to piss them off more than anything else. It's just ignoring it.
Agreed. My final note on this one, although obviously if anyone else wants to talk about it, feel free. But my final note on this one is that the people who made Hatred, which obviously got a lot of press because everybody was quite offended by this game that had no point, essentially, and was doing what Postal had been doing. The people who made that are now making a very impressive real-time strategy game called Ancestors, which is set in a slightly Norse setting, and it's completely unlike what they made before. It's a really high-quality real-time strategy game with squads and group movements, and it's really impressive. And you would not have been able to tell that it was made by the same developers unless you looked into it.
Yeah, but you know what that is, don't you? That's a classic move. Let's make a completely random game that's massively controversial, because obviously, like as we've discussed before, all news is good news. But when it comes to marketing and things like that, if people are talking about it, it's going to get bought, and that's given them the money to go and make the actual game that they wanted to make.
Wow, such a cynical view, Jesus.
It is, but at the end of the day, it is business.
Jesus, he's only just got over that.
Yeah. But at the end of the day, business is business, and some moves are underhanded, shall we say? But it's all business at the end of the day.
Oh, you're probably right. It's kind of disgusting that we can even conceive that notion, in my opinion.
Yeah, but I mean, the thing is, yes, it may be disgusting, but sometimes it's. I wouldn't blame the developer for doing that. It's kind of the society that we're in now. You have to do what you need to do to get ahead in the market, as it were. It's just society.
Speaking of which, guys, I'm making a cooking game where you feed puppies and kittens to Nazis. It's going to be great.
That sounds good.
I'll be honest with you. As time goes on, I said I had finished talking on this one. We'll have to have a conversation about marketing techniques and stuff like that, because recently the Tokyo 42 launch on PlayStation 4 had a bit of a situation around it that actually wasn't a situation. It was a marketing ploy where the publisher pretended that, had another developer make up a fake game and say that Tokyo 42 was a clone of Tokyo 41, a long lost game from kind of the 1980s, and that he should be taken, the publisher should be taken to court for this, etc. And it was clever, and something seemed odd, and the technology wasn't right, but at the same time, I couldn't help but think, even if this is just one of his mates joking around, this is going to wear away at him, and this isn't right, and this isn't fair, and it's not nice if it's someone messing around. If it's somebody actually being malicious or they have a point, then still there's something wrong there. And so I was starting to get concerned for the publisher, thinking that he was being psychologically worn down. And then obviously it turned out that it was a big old marketing ploy, which did get a fair bit of attention. And so does that then further this spiral of sneaky tricks?
No, you see, what you've just described to me sounds awesome, because it's not something that's been done before.
No,
it was a completely new ploy. I mean, and to be honest, in that situation, obviously, he made out that he was being hurt, but he wasn't hurting anyone. He hadn't done anything that was offensive to anyone. The only person it was really affecting, which is a wrestling term, kayfabe, in the story, was him, but it was all made up by him. So I don't really have a problem with that. Well done. Well done to him, sir.
I was just asking Toby if it was on Steam, and apparently it hasn't even made it onto Steam yet. So it's not. It's not even good enough for Steam. That's kind of hilarious.
Excellent.
Unable to get a copy. Despite my best efforts.
Right. So that's the heavy topics for this week. Now let's move on to a few topics that a lot of people are happy about. So, George, tell us about your Magic School game.
Oh, yes. Let me bring up the article. It's a new game.
Oh,
okay,
sorry, may I make a request? Can you recreate the sound that you have put into the podcast document for us, please?
Oh, sure. It's a squeak.
Thank you. You may continue.
That noise is the same as a mouse getting chased and then cut in half.
Oh, good God.
It's not a very nice noise.
Anyways, yes. I am a huge, huge Chucklefish fan. I pretty much worship every game that they release because I love pixel art. I love what they do. And they have recently announced that they are inspired from recently their work with Stardew Valley, because they've been handling the multiplayer aspect of that. And that's coming out hopefully sometime this year or early next year. I don't remember which. But they have recently announced that they're going to be making a magical-based school type of game in the same vein as Stardew Valley. And they've released some screenshots, and it just looks fantastic, and I cannot be more excited for this game. I cannot wait to play this game. I don't think they have an official name yet. I think there's a lot of people bouncing around names like Spellbound, but they haven't officially named it yet. But it looks so fantastic. It has a lot of, obvious Harry Potter vibes. Harry Potter plus Harvest Moon is the only thing I have to say, and that just, to me, that sounds amazing. I'm fangirling, fan geeking over here, whatever term you want to use. It just sounds amazing to me.
Spellbound is the name that I'd seen as well, although they might have issues with that because Sony used that for one of their PlayStation Move tie-ins. They had this kind of book thing that you could get that PlayStation Move read.
That was excellent, by the way. I'll just mention
so
that.
they might have some issues with that, but no, the game looks absolutely brilliant. I love, as you said, the pixel art that tends to go hand in hand with games that they're publishing or developing, and I really like the idea of a kind of magic school kind of thing, I guess.
I mean, is this them following the pattern that Harvest Moon went? So you had Harvest Moon, and then obviously it kind of had a split, and they released Rune Factory, which was basically a magic version of Harvest Moon.
They did mention that is one of the sources for its inspiration as well. They kind of mentioned that as well when it comes to this game. But they've also mentioned things like potion crafting, and apparently they're not necessarily going to have that exact farming aspect, but they're going to have enough there to kind of keep you constantly busy as you were in, let's say, Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley. And yeah, so it looks really great. It's one of those games, Biomutant, and now Spellbound is the games that I'm looking forward to the most out of 2018.
What would be nice is if, I mean, did any of you play Canis Canamedit fully?
Yes, I had the original version of that.
Never
yes.
played it.
It has a routine system in it, which is really nice. That's what I like about Harvest Moon.
Well, yeah, you're in school, aren't you? Yeah, you have to go to lessons, otherwise you get detention and all kind of stuff.
So it runs on the principle of Grand Theft Auto, i.e. you've got a big open area that gets more open as the game goes on. But rather than the missions just being little bubbles that you go up to whenever you're willing to take them on, they essentially only occur at certain points of the day, and the day has got a time cycle on it. So, and obviously the map is subsequently a lot smaller. So if you're going to go to geography, you have to get there on time. If you're going to go to English, you have to get there on time. And that was really cool, even though the lessons themselves were just little mini games.
They were little QTEs, weren't they, pretty much?
Yeah, they were. It was almost like a little dance. It was like a little DDR game, wasn't it? So, but that was really cool. And I think if they do that, even if it's intersected with, actual, verbing spells, or I don't quite know how they'd do it. But if they have that kind of structure to the game, I'll be happy to see how they actually manage to try and implement the whole setting of the game, as it were, because magic in games is obviously a bit of an odd thing, because magic can be rather powerful at times, which can be very unbalanced, which can be an issue in games.
Yeah, I think what you just said was like those are great ideas, and I think there's a multitude of ways you explore that. You have magical beasts, and you go to class, and maybe you could learn to tame. This is all speculation, of course, and just things that I would like to see, anyways. But yeah, you can go tame magical beasts. You have to go to beast class. You want to learn more, curative spells. You have to go to whatever class relates to that, or destructive magic, or herbology to potion making. It has a lot of room to play with. And I think you're right that it is definitely going to have that routine aspect to it, and then they're going to kind of litter it in with that Harvest Moon aspect where you can flirt with other students and have relationships, and there's probably going to be a grand hall where everybody's going to be at, and there's going to be holidays and special events, and it's just, to me, I think it's gonna be spectacular. I think it's going to be a great game, and it has I think it does have a lot of room to play.
Yeah, it certainly looks good. I mean, I've only seen a couple of screenshots and all that, but it's certainly one to look out for. Definitely.
It'll be definitely a game I probably bring back on the podcast. I do apologize. This will probably be not the last time you guys hear of this.
No, it looks good. Right, so Mr. Toby is looking forward to something this week, and that is Heat Signature.
Yes, so Heat Signature is you have an entire galaxy of space, and you're a bounty hunter in a small ship. Your job is to bounty hunter it up. It looks amazing. You fly around, you go onto procedurally generated spaceships, you go through and you kill or knock out the people you either steal a piece of technology or money or kidnap a person. I've been following it for nearly 2 years now, and it looks like it's coming on really well, and it's coming out at this point in 4 days. Really excited for it.
It's a really promising game, but then again, it's from Tom Francis, who made Gunpoint, which was equally an interesting title, which not only introduced or had mechanics that were new and hadn't been used in other games, but consistently used them all the way through the game. The difference, obviously, between Gunpoint and this is that this is profoundly open world, and it's all based on that kind of trajectory when you're not, in a ship. And then when you're in a ship, it's in this brutal, fast-paced, impulsive, chaotic conflict to clear or get through the ship. I suppose there's a stealth option as well, but from what I've seen, it's very much a 2D top-down infiltration game that takes on the best bits of Hitman, where you kind of panic and grab a wrench and knock that guy out and grab a gun and shoot that person. But then it gets a bit science fiction and you kind of teleport through that wall and drop a bomb and teleport out, and then all of a sudden you're in the pilot's chair and you're steering the ship. And I think the most impressive thing, despite, obviously my excitement about the game from what I just said, the most impressive thing to me is that it's all in one screen. You
said that like a question.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's all in one. Sorry. Yeah. It's all in one screen. In that you're literally punching a bloke in the face, and then you're sitting in the chair that you just beat him out of or whatever, and then the game just pulls back, and all of a sudden you're just another tiny blip like you were before you got into that ship, floating around in the galaxy, and everything's still going on. All the other systems were still at play, but it's just at that moment you zoomed all the way down. And I love that scale. The fact that, like in real life, I guess, the whole world is ticking on. I'm talking to you guys at the minute, and one of you are in America, one's in Australia, one of you's about 4 miles away from me. But when I put this headset down, the only thing that's going to exist in my world, kind of, is what's in front of me again. And so all of a sudden, priority number one is, why is the cat throwing up in the kitchen? But then one of you sends me a message, and then boom, all of a sudden, the whole world's there again, And
You just went from
it's that scale.
something extremely philosophical to extremely mundane and back to philosophical. And it was, I don't know.
It does
Really
represent.
amazing, that's what it was.
It does represent the scale that he's talking about, though.
Amazing.
Yes.
It's excellent. I like the fact that when you're on a ship, it seems to play like Hotline Miami.
It's made by the guys who made Gunpoint, so I mean, right there, I give them massive kudos, and it has my interest based off that alone.
Hotline Miami actually is a really, really good example. I went for Hitman because Hitman to me is about discovering new things. Every hour that I played that game, I felt like I learned something new, whereas Hotline Miami was very much about reflex, killing everything, whereas Hitman was about accidentally finding a new mechanic. But yeah, no, you're right. With that point of view, I can definitely see the Hotline Miami angle, and obviously how frantic it gets as well.
My only concern is with games that are procedurally generated, is that eventually, how much randomness they can put into it before it all starts to kind of feel the same way, or tactics start to get reused to get things done. It's definitely an interesting looking game, though, and you guys have made me more interested about it for sure.
Excellent. Well, thank you for that, lads. So now we'll move to Dan for his exciting game of the week, and that is Cook Serve Delicious 2.
And I want to discuss the first one as well a little bit. So
go ahead.
Has anyone here played either of the two games?
Oh.
Well, I did have that game I mentioned where I'm serving puppies and kittens to Nazis.
What is Cook Serve Delicious? Which one is it? Yes, I have played it.
It's brilliant, right? It's hard to explain, but basically, no, there is no basically to it. I'll take that back.
Press buttons to make food, and then you do it super fast, and it's like an MMO, and the speed you press buttons, you're making a pie for something.
That's
super hectic.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody looked at somebody who was playing Cook Serve Delicious and they were into that game, then they'd be like, what is this person? A 1990s Hollywood hacker in a movie? Because you're literally sitting there and you're glancing from the side to see the orders that are coming up, and then you're looking to the other side to see the buttons that you've got to press to serve up the food. And it's all about sequences and patterns, and it's all about threat analysis, and it's all about, and it's really kind of peak game when you're like, oh, they want a lasagna, but a lasagna is going to need a couple of layers of cheese to go on, and that's going to need to go in the oven, and I don't know if there's lasagna actually.
And I've got to wash the toilet at the same time, and also pull this other person's.
That's it, and all of a sudden.
Out.
Yeah, and all of a sudden this food is done and it's ticking down, and I can't lose my perfect score, so I've got to do those. And I mean, that's just the first game. The first game you had kind of 5 or 6 different serving counters, I suppose, as it were. And then you'd prepare and choose your menu in the morning. Each one of those required a certain amount of actions. So, for instance, a favourite of mine, both in real life and in Cook Serve Delicious, was beer.
Just hold down, wasn't it?
You hold down the down button and then press a button when it's ready to go, and that's it, you serve it up. And that's pretty simple. But then for things like the salad, which was another one that I used regularly, you would have to obviously press the button to activate it, which you can do with the numpad. For anyone listening who hasn't played this, everything can be done with the mouse, or it can be done with the keyboard, or you can even set it up to work on controllers as well.
I recommend controller. It's great.
I really enjoyed keyboard because I really like the accidental acronyms and the fact that you learn the letter patterns. So for the salad, for instance, it may appear in slot 1. You press 1 on the keyboard, it brings it up on screen, and at that point you're engaged. If you do something wrong now, you just foul that person, which is a bit awkward. And I wish there was a kind of like, no, I'm going to shove this in the bin and start this again, but regardless, that's not in it, and that's a choice that's been made.
That would be a waste of product. That's why it's not cost effective.
I'd still rather do it, even if it costs me money, just to get that positive rating on the restaurant. But no, I do agree. That's probably the most valid argument I've heard against that. Actually, that said, I'll remember that next time I'm kicking myself. So, for instance, for a salad, they might say we want bacon, we want onions, we want mushrooms, we want bacon, onions, mushrooms, and whatever the last thing is. I can't remember what it was, but it was G on the keyboard. And so you'd press 1, and then it'd go, we want these. And so you quickly hit on the keyboard B for bacon, O for onions and whatever, M for mushrooms and something, and G for the other one. So you've just written in BOMG, and you've put everything onto the food. That's it, BOMG. And you just hit enter, and that's it. It's served. They're happy. You get a bit of a tip if you're quick, right? And that's the core of that game. But as the game goes on, you unlock more complicated recipes, but they pay you more money, which allows you to unlock better recipes and better equipment to do certain things. And that's really the core of Cook Serve Delicious, but it's done at such an odd pace. You have 2 rush hours that happen during the day where it just goes completely manic and all of your counters are full up, and there's a great feeling of survival that comes from managing to get through the day. And I don't think you can actually fail a day, but if you keep fighting, then at the end you're like, I can't believe it's done. It's brilliant. Wait a minute. I've just spent 5 minutes trying to cook in a kitchen why am I doing this with my life? So it's really satisfying in that kind of lifestyle simulator, like we mentioned in a previous subject, Harvest Moon and stuff like that. And it's really kind of satisfying.
I did have a question. So what are some of the key differences between part 1 and part 2?
I was just hitting the transition point there. You have the best timing.
Also, I'd just like to quickly...
Oh, go on.
The core of Cook Serve Delicious isn't any cooking food or anything. It's being someone who is so sure of themselves that they will not hire another person. That's the core of the game. Being too good to just hire another person to work with you.
That ties in well to what I was just about to say. So the big change, one of the big changes in Cook Serve Delicious 2 is you can do co-op. You can do 2-player co-op. So you could have somebody managing the orders that are coming in and somebody prepping the row of, kind of forgot the term for it now. But basically the other big change is that you have a second row of stuff where you can, if you want, prepare a bunch of onion rings, for instance. You hold down the tab key and press 1 or whatever, and you prepare certain dishes or certain components of dishes so that when certain people come along, you can just press the button and you've already served them. It's like an instant, I prepared, and so I've got 4 or 5 of these kind of instant solutions to problems. And so that adds a completely new layer to the game. So all of a sudden, you're not just juggling this food requires 3 or 4 levels of interaction. You're also juggling, I can put a bunch of things on here on my menu that I know are going to go out regularly, and I can shove them on these back, tables, and all of a sudden I've got a guaranteed income as long as I can keep them full, which is surprisingly hard when it comes to rush hour. But then, as well as that, you can also put sides on that. And if you've got these kind of giveaway sides like macaroni, cheese, etc., then you get not just the perfect score for getting the meal right, but you get an added bonus to that because you provided a free side. And so
Nice.
there's an extra layer to it. And yes, it's more frantic, but then they've stripped back the story mode, so you're not penalized for failing too much, as in you don't have a whole reputation on the line. You're still leveling up and you're still getting star rating, but there's less being gambled and you don't have to upgrade as much. You just kind of level up to unlock more slots and more meals. So yeah, it's
So have you and the missus played the game together yet?
we've not done co-op yet. No.
There should be a video about that. That would be great.
There would be a lot of shouting.
That would be great. That sounds like fun to me.
Shouting isn't fun.
It can be. By the way, I don't think I've ever heard threat analysis and lasagna in the same sentence before today. So thank you for that.
Lasagna is serious business.
You and Garfield would agree.
I equally hate Mondays.
For some reason, I'm looking at. I had a look at the video because I didn't even know what this game was. It just makes me want to play Typing of the Dead again.
That's a brilliant point. And in many ways, that's also what this is. Because when you start forming those nonsense amalgamations of letters into nonsense words and remembering them, it's very much that. You can play on mouse and you can play on mouse as well, or obviously gamepad, as Toby mentioned earlier. And in the first one, I was playing mostly on keyboard, whereas I'm actually using the mouse more in this second one. In the second one, you can use the middle mouse button, or the middle mouse wheel, to roll between different pages, because there are several pages of ingredients on certain things. And you can also hold down the click button to drag over things and select everything you touch, which is very useful when it comes to certain things like throwing out all of the rubbish or cleaning out one of the drinks machines and then refilling it.
Well, if I may, there's also a game kind of like that. If anyone has ever played Overcooked, it's a great game to play with your friends and family.
Goodness. I've played that. I've played it 3-player, and it immediately made us all realise that we needed to play 4-player.
Oh no, that's dangerous.
But Overcooked is very good as well. And I imagine that when you're playing cooperative Cook Serve Delicious 2, you do have that. You do need to have that kind of like outside of the game level of verbal communication about who is going to do what, so that you're not stepping on each other's feet.
Which you mean shouting at each other.
Pretty much, yeah.
And swearing like, I can't even remember that chef's guy's name now. Who's the chef that swears a lot?
Gordon Ramsay.
That's the dude. You just turn into Gordon Ramsay. It's like, F this, F that, get this everything out there.
The thing with Overcooked was that you could take stuff off and then you could put it back on. Whereas in Cook Serve Delicious, once you've kind of pressed a button, you've committed to it. So if something hasn't finished cooking, but you're kind of, I suppose, a little bit shaky because you've just kind of cleared 2 or 3 things and it's all going a bit nuts, and you press a button wrong, then that's it. You've kind of ruined that meal, as it were. You can't press a button to cancel that and reattempt it, which, as I said earlier, is a bit of a pain, but at the same par, it teaches you to be more controlled and try and remember the pattern of which the customers appeared. So it's definitely a game that you get a lot better with over time.
Will we be seeing a review on the website?
Yeah, almost definitely. I'm going to write something up about it. It's a hard game to review because there's so little to it, but at the same time, it's so engaging. In the same way that I don't think people could ever really write proper in-depth reviews on clicker games, but we all know how dangerous they are and how you can spend far too much time kind of tweaking mathematically the levels and layers of characters in order to min-max things. And Cook Serve Delicious is very much the same. There's a kind of like, you need to build the habits. You need to actually simply train yourself to be good at that game. And when you're good at that game, all you're really doing is clicking things and hammering things. So it's a hard thing to explain, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Oh, makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Makes perfect sense. Anyway, lovely. Thank you for that eloquent description of this rather interesting looking game. Buy it. Okay. There's the review. Right, so last up, we've got something that George put on the itinerary for this week, but I'm rather excited about this as well. Not a particular game, but this is a discussion on the Nintendo Direct that happened this Wednesday. George, it's your topic, so you can take it away.
Well, I mean, it was just something I felt like we should obviously talk about. I forced myself to watch it on Friday night because, it's Nintendo. You got to watch what Nintendo's doing, what they're bringing out. And I'm probably going to have a very unpopular opinion about this particular Nintendo Direct because I felt it to be slightly underwhelming, to be brutally honest. I think there's a lot of product jamming into this Nintendo Direct. There was a lot of, look what we're making plushies, and there's a new 3DS, and here's another new 3DS, and Pokemon, and there's a lot of cool things that were kind of announced here and there, but I felt like in general, this wasn't their greatest Nintendo Direct that I've seen thus far.
No, I mean, I suppose I can kind of agree with that, considering I did stay up and I watched the whole thing from start to finish, but I can't remember much about it.
Exactly.
There wasn't much there. I mean, the big thing that obviously I took away from it is Nintendo are now getting the third-party support that they deserve. What with Doom coming out, and then they're getting the brand new Wolfenstein 2 is coming to the Switch as well, and obviously we knew about LA Noire, we discussed that the other week, and I think this is a very, very good thing for Nintendo. Developers are now seeing it as a viable system.
And what bugged me about, I mean, not bugged me, but what I thought was kind of like, is those things that you mentioned were kind of like footnotes compared to like, here's a new Pokemon 3DS.
Yeah, but it was,
like,
I don't know,
footnotes.
Yeah, it kind of reminded me of the E3 one in many ways, where the really big stories that came out of there were the head of Pokemon Company saying we're making a Pokemon game, and the very brief glimpse of the Metroid 4 logo. They were the biggest stories with the least amount of content.
Right. Yeah. So I think that was kind of the things I didn't like about this particular Nintendo Direct. The things I did like, which I think a lot of people came out about talking about it, and I kind of had the same effect, was Project Octopath. That looks fantastic. It looks really neat. It reminds me a lot of Saga Frontier. If anyone's ever played that PlayStation game, old game, it really reminded me of Saga Frontier, and it looks really kind of interesting, the things that they're able to do with that game.
Yeah, and of course the other big thing that came out of this, which I know that Toby enjoyed, was Mario's nipples.
Yes, we cannot talk about this without talking about his nipples.
Because I've already pre-ordered Odyssey, and I'm very much looking forward to it because it's the newest in the mainline Mario series, and not another new Super Mario Brothers. It's not new anymore, Nintendo. You've been doing it for 10 years.
You know that they're saying that Nintendo, for some reason, is trying to prove that Mario is human, and that's why they gave him nipples.
What do you mean they gave him nipples? Surely he's always had nipples. You've never seen them before. Have you seen his nipples before, George? What kind of online websites have you been visiting? But no, I watched that. I mean, when it first started, and it was like, oh, you can go in shops and buy costumes, and I was like, oh my god. And then as soon as I saw Dr. Mario, I was like, okay, I'm sold. That's good to me. That's fine.
Now, that's the question now, isn't it? Are the nipples just a costume?
What, stick on?
They're
Possibly.
pasties, are they?
No, they cover up nipples. That's the wrong way around.
The guy's not got a belly button, which is
Maybe he has
obviously...
other nipples underneath these nipples.
Obviously, a belly button is a physical deformation caused by the way that humans sever the connection from the mother to the child on childbirth. So
what you're saying is Mario was never born. He's some kind of pod person.
He was
yeah,
cloned.
and not just not born, obviously, because technically people who are born via cesarean section aren't technically born, as it were. They're just birthed. But yeah, it means that there's a high chance that he didn't have a mother per se. He may have been a test tube baby, or even worse, some strange hat demon.
This just got slightly dark.
But
Look,
it's funny that the nipples thing was kind of the big highlight of Nintendo Direct, really.
Well, it's
He's
just
direct.
one of those things, and it always happens. The meme, a meme, will always come out of something like this.
His direct competitor was a blue hedgehog. Hedgehogs don't come in blue flavor. Trust me, I've checked.
You can
And-
spray paint them one,
They do if you put them in the freezer long enough.
right?
I don't think either of those last particularly long or run particularly fast, though.
Well, yeah, that is very true.
Okay, I spray painted blue hedgehog attached to a rocket. Boom, Sonic.
Sonic Boom.
There you go.
And on that bombshell, so that brings us to the end of this week's Big Boss Babble. I thank the three guests once again this week. So that was Dan.
Thank you for the thank you.
George.
Mario is an alien. It's true.
It's true. And Toby.
Good night, all.
Yep. And we'll all see you next week. Bye for now.